Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger around the OAA, the host of Last Three Brain Cells, and the host between Taormina and Orion Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching on Orion Television. A lot to talk about this week here on the podcast. A lot of storylines here started to brew, especially around the basketball ranks. A lot of news broke down over the weekend here, so we're going to break down a lot of the news that have occurred in the last, few days here. And there's been a lot of it. Some coaching changes that I didn't expect during the year. Really some things that I didn't expect. You really look at, of course, the situation over at, with Oxford girls basketball. They just changed coaches again. Trevor Marshall is now the new coach over there at Oxford. He takes over for Coach Phil Dawson, who, of course, there's been a lot of speculation surrounding that one. Then you look at, of course, over at Pontiac, they do have a new coach there as well. DeJuan Washington taking over. I heard about that one, which was stunning. So DeQuan Washington's new coach at Pontiac, coaching the boys team. They're off to I think they're 1-1 right now. I don't know if there was a falling out over there with I don't know if there was a falling out with Andrew Myers or something. I just don't know, but it was really weird before the season started that Pontiac made the coaching change, going with Washington as the new coach. He's going to have a challenge ahead of him, though. Obviously, you do Trinity Claudio. You got the Henry brothers. But you got some questions. That Pontiac, they got a lot of questions that they have to address. And I think if they can address some things, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll go from there, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, that's the big news here. Pontiac, having a new boys basketball coach starting of the year. And then, of course, over at Oxford, as I mentioned, Trevor Marshall, new head coach over there, takes over that program. Oxford right now sits at 1-3 on the year. They lost a really tough overtime game to Livonia Stevenson over at Rochester University. So it was shocking that Phil Dawson stepped down over there at Oxford, was let go. Don't know what happened over there. Really don't know what happened over there. I know there's been a lot of speculation. But Oxford, they have a new coach Trevor Marshall. I know he's coaching both the JV and the varsity teams. Really difficult task over there. I know with Oxford, I know a lot of things over there. It's been going on over there. So, it'll be interesting to see how Coach Marshall handles, the transition period. Now, the transition period, I think, is a lot more smoother now because you look at, of course, you got a guy in there who knows the kids, who knows the system, knows the parents. Been through it all over at Oxford. And, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how everything smooths out over there at Oxford. So it'll be really interesting, really unfortunate, before the season started, we're talking about coaching changes, but it'll be interesting to see what happens over at Oxford on the girls' side, considering they still got a very tough schedule ahead of them. And also what happens over at Pontiac with the boys, considering that situation. So it'll be interesting to see how things go when it comes to the coaching changes over there. So we'll see what happens over there. We'll see how it does, and I think we're going to go from there and see what happens. Let's go to football. Obviously, the news here, I know a lot of people have been speculating it. I know a lot of people have been talking about it, but two new coaches have stepped down over at OAA Nation. Of course, Dan Loria is stepping down at Bloomfield Hills. Don't know what the situation was over there. I guess the athletic department wanted to go a different direction. But Loria was 42-67 as coach at Bloomfield Hills. He was previously the coach at Bloomfield Hills Losser. When they merged into one, it made sense that, Loria would be the guy taking over the reins at Bloomfield Hills. When Losser and Andover both merged, I mean, he was very successful at Losser, leading them to a couple of state semifinal appearances. He was 9-1 twice at Bloomfield Hills, 2013 and 2021. 2013, of course, was the year he had John Paddock at quarterback. And then 2021, where they had that undefeated season. I know I got a lot of backlash over Bloomfield Hills considering their schedule that they played. When I looked at the rankings to start the year, I didn't rank Bloomfield Hills really high because of that. But, they had an undefeated regular season, but then they ran into Novi Detroit Catholic Central in the first round of the playoffs where they were just completely shellacked. I remember that game extremely well. So when I look at this job, and this is a really interesting job because, you look at Bloomfield Hills, this is a program that it's in need of a fresh start. And I think really when you look at the word fresh start, this is a program that needs it considering, you only have two programs. You have a JV, and then you have a varsity. Really, kind of the last 3 years, I mean, they kind of lost their way. They went 5-22 in the last 3 years, which is not very good. So when I look at the legacy Loria leaves, he left a very successful program. But for Bloomfield Hills, I think for them, it probably was time for them to go to a different direction. And I will be very curious to see who takes over there. I think it'll be very interesting to see who takes over. Could it be a coach that has experience? Could it be a guy that, that is virtually a coordinator, want to take a head coaching job? And I think it would be really interesting to see how that direction goes. But it would be really interesting to see who takes over that program at Bloomfield Hills because, it's not a bad job. It is. You got a lot of good kids that come over there. Now, there's going to be some challenges, obviously, when you look at the, between sports and academics over there at Bloomfield Hills. I know that, you look at Bloomfield Hills, it's a great school, great kids there. Administration's good there. I mean, but the challenge for Bloomfield Hills is going to be is can you find the right coach that fits their system, and can they, put a program together where they can compete at a high level, that can win games, win championships. I mean, that's really, I think, the direction where Bloomfield Hills needs to go with their coaching search. And I think it's got to be the right guy, and I think it's got to be a guy who can be a program builder. If they can put that in, then I think they're going to be very successful. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens over there at Bloomfield Hills. But, Dan Loria no longer the coach there. Don't know what happened. If he stepped down, if he was forced out, I don't know. But it'll be very interesting to see how Bloomfield Hills goes with their coaching search. And, and it'll be interesting. Be really interesting. But you got to credit the success that Loria had over there at Bloomfield Hills. Even when he was at Bloomfield Hills Losser, just a magnificent career for him. Just a magnificent career. Coaching that program over there, just magnificent career over there. And then you look at Avondale. I mean, Coach Bob Meyer stepping down over there at Avondale. After 3 years coaching the program. Meyer went 22-10 in his 3 years at Avondale. Made the postseason. Won the gold the last 2 years, but ran to a very good Walled Lake Western team in the postseason, most notably in the district final. So when you look at Avondale, you kind of felt like when I talked to Meyer, they were putting the program in play. They were putting everything together. And I guess something came up where, he, said, I got to go a different direction. And maybe a better job opportunity came up. I don't know. But he felt it was time for him to leave Avondale. And, and obviously you lose a lot of athletes, a lot of proven athletes over there. But, I guess for him it was time to go. And, he stepped down and, and Avondale's looking for a new football coach. So, when you look at program building, Meyer's done a really nice job building Avondale. Now, Avondale was a very successful program even when they were, before he got there. I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, they've had some great coaches come in there. Eka Terrier, there's a couple coaches I got to remember going back into my mind. But they were very successful. Oh, Steve Deutsch. Steve Deutsch was another one who I thought was really, really successful with Avondale. Eka Terrier has been another one. When I look at Avondale, it's a great job. I mean, it's a really great job. You got Avondale Middle School next door. Avondale Middle School is nearby. Avondale Elementary, I think, is next door. You look at Avondale, it's just getting the kids to come out and play. And it's just trying to find the right system of success is going to be the key going forward for Avondale, because this is a program where I think you can find success. You can build success here at Avondale. You can build success. You can build championship experience, championship success. And if you can do that, you're going to be very successful. And I really think for Avondale, it's a good job to have. So we'll see what happens. We're going to see what happens with Avondale going forward. But I think for them, they got to get the right person in there. A coach can stay there long term. And I think if they do, if you're going to be an incoming senior next year, you're going to virtually be, I think, on your third coach and your third coach. Your third coach in about your 4 years. It's not an easy transition. So it'll be very interesting to see how Avondale goes this offseason. It'll be really interesting to see where they go with their coaching search, with their hire. I know they got a new athletic director over there. So it'll be really interesting to see what type of direction Avondale will go with their search. And I think it'll be something to really, really watch for going forward. So now you look at in the MOA coaching search, you look at Bloomfield Hills is now open. You look at Avondale's now open, and Ferndale is now open. So really 3 jobs around the league that is right now open. I'll be curious, and we're going to keep an eye on the three coaching searches over at Ferndale, Bloomfield Hills, and Avondale. I had to wait to confirm this, but I finally found a source confirming that for both Bloomfield Hills and Avondale that they are looking for new coaches. So we'll see what happens. You look at the divisions that they're going to be in. I know the divisions were, you look at the divisions they're going to be in. Bloomfield Hills being the blue. You look at Avondale, they're in the gold. And then, of course, you look at Ferndale, another team that's going to also be in the blue as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the coaching searches go with these 3 programs. I'll be very curious to see how these 3 teams will look like when it comes to changing their philosophies, changing their styles. It'll be really, really interesting to see how the philosophy goes. And I think it'll be really, really interesting to see how things would go when it comes to, these 3 jobs and what 3 of the jobs, these coaches would fit. So it'd be really interesting to see in what direction that each administration goes by when it comes to finding their new coach. So we'll see what happens. All right, now, we talked enough about coaching searches and all that. Let's talk about a lot of basketball here. When you look at the storylines, last week I started off with boys. This week I'm going to start off with girls. Because I think there's some storylines here that are building. Really building. And if there's one team that certainly needs a story, certainly is a storyline, you look at the Troy Colts. You look at the Troy Colts girls basketball program. This year, this team had a lot of expectations. Coach Laura Guzman turned the program around. They lost 9 straight. Then she turned it around. Got a number 1 seed in the playoffs. Went up to the white. And then they had that tough loss to Bloomfield Hills in the district semifinals. So everything was aligned. You got the majority of the team coming back. You bring in a very proven freshman, Macy Zider. And your schedule's brutal to start. I mean, you open up with a tough loss to Lake Orion. Then you lose to Clarkston. Then you lose to Troy Athens. And then, of course, you lose to Howell. But when I look at the start of the year for Troy, you kind of thought to yourself coming in the year, I have a veteran team. You have a veteran team. You have a lot of experience. You've changed the culture around. You got the kids believing into winning after struggling early on and then turning it around last season. So you thought, okay, this is going to change. This is going to keep on rolling. But you had that. You open up with Lake Orion. Now, Lake Orion's a team that's better than people think. When healthy, this team's a good team. I mean, when healthy. I mean, you look at Lake Orion. I mean, like right now, they sit at 3-2. Coming off 2 big wins against Rochester Lutheran Northwest and the big one against Plymouth Canton, where they just where Izzy Walensky and Charlotte Peplowski really both went off in that game. I still don't know how Lake Orion won that one, but this segment's more Troy. So Troy's coming off a really tough loss to Lake Orion. Then they play Clarkston. Get into a high-scoring game with them. Clarkston ended up winning that one. And I noticed something. Was off when I looked at Troy before the season started. I noticed something was off. And you look at with Troy, Troy usually, for them to be successful, everybody's got to be successful. And it starts off with their top player, Diamond Prince. You look at what Diamond Prince has done. I mean, like this offseason. I mean, like, I know she, she joined Michigan Storm AU. But she was going to be the key player, the key catalyst to carry this team. And, she's done her part. I mean, like, she had 30 against Clarkston. But sometimes, you look at with her, and then you look at the Troy Athens game, she gets teed up in the first half. And then late in the third quarter, she goes down with an injury. Had to be carted off. So, so now if you're Coach Guzman, what do? Now, Troy made a comeback in that one. They were down 20 against Troy Athens. Came back, made the score respectable, lost that one 49-45. And then they had a tough blowout loss. They lost 65-27 to Howell. And now Howell was a very good team. Don't get me wrong, Howell's a very good team. So when I look at the struggles for Troy, it is pretty simple where the struggles go. It's pretty simple. Because you look at Troy and you look at, of course, everything starts and flows with Diamond Prince. when she gets frustrated, when she gets flustered, I mean, then things go south quickly. You look at that game, and I know she's getting looked at with college scouts. She's getting looked at. Here's the thing I would say to her right now. This is what I would say to her. You gotta just play. Just play. Don't worry about the officiating. Just be you. Because I noticed a difference from your freshman year to your junior year. Big difference here. In your freshman year, you just enjoyed playing. You enjoyed playing. You basically, it was, and I'll tell you what, you got all the talent in the world. You got all the talent. I knew you'd be a special player since your freshman year. But when did this attitude start coming up? When did it start coming up? I don't know what it is. I mean, before the Lake Orion game, I saw a totally different Diamond Prince than the one I saw her freshman year. And it's hard to explain the last year and a half. I mean, you look at what colleges, college coaches, they always look for is they look for character kids, great kids. I mean, they don't look at the player, they look at the family. They look at the family. And I think really, I really think right now, I'll be honest with you, she's at a crossroads. She really is. And you look at Troy right now, I think they're in a crossroads. Because you now sitting at 0-4, your best player, and I saw the film where Prince got hurt. It didn't look good. It really didn't. She had to get carted off. I don't know. I mean, by the looks of it, it looked like an ACL. It really did. And if you're Troy, you just lost your best player. Now what do you do? Is your league title, is your league hopes, your league hopes, I don't think they're shots, but they're pretty close. I mean, because you look at Royal Oaks there, you look at Seaholmes there. I mean, those are two teams that I really think could, I look at with Troy, you look at the expectations that they had coming in the year. They want to go to the red. I don't think this team right now would be worthy going to the red right now. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I mean, I'll be curious to see how Prince goes through her recovery stages. I'll be very curious. Because ACL injuries are not easy to heal from. They are not. And now this puts pressure on Reagan Zeider, Macy Zeider, Carly Block, Sophia Castanis. It puts pressure on them now because you're not going to replace the production that Diamond Prince gave you. So now this puts pressure on, okay, do you play team? I mean, what I saw during the fourth quarter when Troy battled back, it was the perfect analogy of team ball. I mean, they were a totally different team when Diamond Prince left the game. They were a different team. Much different team. And when you look at that team, that battled back, made it a game with Troy, Athens, it felt like this is a different team. And then having to play Howell that next night, on that Monday night, I knew it was going to be a really tough match for them anyway. But, Troy's kind of that team that's in the crossroads. And if you're Diamond Prince, you really got to, now, you're looking like more you're done for the year. I don't know what the injury status is with her, but by the looks of what I saw on the film, it looks like it's an ACL. And if that's the case, that's a devastating blow for that team. But, you look at with Troy, the players could motivate around that, around the Prince injury and go on a run. They could do it. I mean, you look at that district they're in. I mean, their district's very manageable. I mean, I think it would be really interesting if Troy and Troy Athens were to play again. Because I think that's a different outcome. And I'm not dissing Coach J.C. Clem's team here or anything, but I just think if that's a different outcome if that game's in a neutral site. And then you look at that district, you got Berkeley's in there. And I really like what Coach Clay Shaver's been doing over there. I really like what he's been doing. So if you're Troy right now, you're kind of in that crossroads. You're in that crossroads. Now you're probably not going to have Diamond Prince for a while. I mean, you're going to have to win games basically via team ball. Everybody else got to step up their game. I mean, you got players to do it. You got both Zeider sisters. I mean, I remember Zeider, Reagan and Macy's older sister, Kendra, really well. There were games that she took over herself. There were games. Now, obviously, you look at, Reagan and Macy, they're both different type players than Kendall was. But you also got players like Kelsey Block, who's going to have to step up, going to have to start scoring. Then you got Sophia Castanes. She's going to have to start scoring. Your big situation, you got, it'll be really interesting to see what Coach Laura Guzman does. Especially without Diamond Prince. Because now you look at the situation with Diamond no longer in the picture. Where are you going to get the scoring from? Where are you going to get the options from? That's the question that Coach Laura Guzman faces. And I hope for Diamond, she does well in her recovery. But I just hope that she comes back a more humble player. I really do. I really do. And just play. Just be herself. You know what I mean? That's how I look at it with her. I mean, if she can play like she was her freshman year, stress-free, just like next play. If she can do that, I will guarantee you, she'll be a much better player for it. But, it'd be really interesting to see with Troy, considering you look at the division, considering you look at what they got to deal with. But certainly, Troy's going to be a team to watch for within the next few months, especially now without Diamond Prince. I mean, now if Prince comes back, I'll be curious to see what happens there. Really curious. But this season with Diamond, something was amiss. Something was amiss. And I don't know how to explain it. I really don't. So let's look at now other girls' basketball storylines. Obviously, you look at, but Troy to me is the biggest storyline here, considering where they're at. When you look at this, at the storylines here, the recap of Lakes Valley OAA Challenge, the KLA OAA Challenge, there were some interesting games that I thought were surprising a little bit. Little surprised, little surprised Dearborn beat Rochester the way they did. I was a little surprised about that. Obviously, Lake Orion knocking off Plymouth Canton's a big deal. Clarkson had to survive Northville. I mean, that one was a little bit odd for me, was that one. Clarkson surviving Northville. Troy Athens, they knocked off Novi. And then you look at Stony Creek, no problem with Dearborn Fortson. Avondale losing by 2 to Plymouth Salem. That was something. I take it back on Rochester. They lost a tough one to Plymouth. Plymouth's a very good team, by the way. So I apologize to Dearborn there. It was Plymouth that knocked off Rochester. But I got to bring up Avondale here for a minute here. Avondale coming in, they're coming off a lot of confidence after their big win against Lake Orion. But to lose to Plymouth Salem, now Salem, they lost their best player. They lost Morrison. I mean, that's stunning. For them to lose by 2, I just can't get that one. I really can't. I really can't get that one. I mean, and then you look at Belleville knocking off West Bloomfield. West Bloomfield, you know what? I think they're fine. When I look at West Bloomfield, you kind of knew they were going to take a step back with the Davis sisters no longer there. They lost a lot of talent as well. Destiny Washington was one of them that they lost as well. So I think West Bloomfield's fine, so I'm not worried about them. Clarkston only winning by 2 against Northfield. That was mind-boggling to me. I mean, I didn't expect that one. I thought it'd be much worse. I really did. But credit the Mustangs for playing well against the Wolves. I mean, but Clarkston finding a way to win that one. Gotta give credit to Coach Aaron Goodnow's team there. Stony Creek, no issue with Dearborn Fortson, 38-27. Low-scoring game. Interesting to see how that one goes. I know there were a lot of other games on there, the KLA OA Challenge, and I think also the other storyline you got to look at was, I thought Lake Orion's win against Plymouth Canton was huge for that team, for the Dragons, considering everything they've been through. Bob Bridges, of course, Lake Orion coach, he came in there at halftime and, coached them. And, that says a lot. But it also says a lot about the character of that team. It really does. You got to look at Izzy Walensky. You got to look at Charlotte Peplowski. Now, Peplowski did not play the Avondale game. So you kind of think, and they also didn't have 2 other players either. They didn't have Liz Crawford or Brooke Armstrong. If they played in that game, those 3 girls, I think that's a different outcome. I really think that Avondale game's a different outcome. Even the Brighton game, I think it could be a different outcome. But when you look at Lake Orion, when healthy, this team is very good. Now, do I put them at the level of a Ferndale or a West Bloomfield or Clarkston? Probably not, but I think they're right there. I think they're competitive. I think they're fine. I think Lake Orion's fine. You know what I mean? I think this team right now, when they click on all cylinders, this is a very dangerous team. You look at Ferndale. They're coming off a couple tough losses. They had a tough 10-point loss the other night. But I think they're going to be fine. I mean, playing these D1 teams, they're going to get them better. They're going to get them ready for districts. I think that's their main focus right now is districts. We'll see, but I think that's where their main focal point is. So, we'll see how it goes. I mean, Berkeley had a nice win against Livonia Churchill. Berkeley's a team I got confidence on. They're rolling right now on all cylinders. So when I look at the girls' basketball landscape right now, red, I don't see any changes. The white, I would say right now with Diamond Prince's injury, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal with no Diamond Prince. So that is a big, big deal there. And then you look at the blue. The blue, I still think that division, I still think Berkeley and Avondale are gonna have big saves in that division. The gold, I still think is Farmington, but Ferndale U's gotten better. I like where they're at right now. They're starting to turn things around a little bit. I think, but Farmington right now still rules that division. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, bottom line is, when I look at the side of girls basketball, obviously a Diamond Prince injury, that is a big, big deal when it comes to Troy. Could that change the district around? Maybe, but if they could turn things around, who knows? Who knows? So we'll see what happens. All right, now let's go from girls to boys now. When I look at the boys' side of things, it's interesting because, you look at, there's some teams that are rolling right now off the great starts, teams that are really deceiving right now, teams that are really clicking on all cylinders, teams are going like, what's going on with you guys? So I'm going to look at a couple teams here. I mean, Ferndale University's off to a 5-0 start. I mean, when I look at the Eagles, here's a team that coming into the year, there were a lot of question marks with Coach Josh Nix's team. A lot of question marks. But this is a team that to me, when I look at University, I think with Ferndale University, they've started to turn things around a little bit. They've really been impressive. You look at Ferndale University in boys basketball right now, this team is clicking. They're clicking. 5-0 start, playing good basketball, a lot of confidence. They've managed, they survived games. You look at, they knocked off Detroit Frederick Douglass, start off the year with confidence, then they knocked off Southfield Christian. Both those games by combined 8 points. And then 2 blowout wins against Detroit Universal Academy and Public Safety Academy. And then going on the road beating A&T. If they can stun Rochester and Stony Creek these next 2 weeks, they've got my full attention. And I've seen both Rochester and Stony. Both teams are good teams. You look at Rochester, they had an impressive 4-point overtime win against Stony Creek. And I seen Stony Creek the other day against Dearborn Fordson. And Stony Creek's not a bad team. You look at, they got a full-fledged team. They got a really, really good team over there. The player you really got to pay attention for on Stony Creek is Quentin Rangdar. I'll tell you, this kid can play. And he doesn't even start for them. He doesn't even start for this team. And you look at what he's done. He can dribble drive you. He can shoot threes. He's just got a calm sense of the game. And that's really been a big instrumental part for Stony Creek. Particularly that game against Adams. He had a big game against. He had 20 points against him. Obviously, you look at Tyree Smith. He had a monster game against Adams. But you look at that Stony Creek team. The fact that they have proven guards. You have Gideon Beers, who's a really good floor general. You have Joey Miller, who's a solid guard. He can play. Charlie Felton, when needed, he can take over a game if he wants to. Spencer Beckman in the interior. Jack Fredenberg can back up Beckman if he wanted to. They've got pieces. Stoney's got some pieces. This is not like the Stony Creek of the past where they've struggled in games. This is a different Cougars team. And give credit Coach Jeff Owen for what he's done with that team. Give credit. You look at the job that Coach Nate Abola has done over at Rochester. Obviously having Max Moe there, Greg Tandy there. You look at both Rochester and Stony Creek. Could they be the two teams that could be the biggest threat in the blue? For Ferndale University, this is where the test starts. Being at home, bringing in Rochester and Stony Creek, 2 really difficult games for them. And we'll see. We'll see if they're for real or not. Because right now, when I look at that division, Blueberry Hills is still going to be a team to be reckoned with. So will, Pontiac, maybe. I just don't know how to figure Pontiac out. Pontiac's been a weird team to figure out. And I think that's really where it comes down to, can I trust, Pontiac in a situation like this? Can I trust him? I mean, they're coming off a tough loss to Bologna Churchill in the KLAOA Challenge. They're 1-3 right now. I mean, they got Berkeley coming up on the road. And then they got to play Rochester. And then they're in that class against Waterford Mott, which is really going to be difficult. So, it'll be interesting to see how Pontiac responds. But I just think right now, they're in a tough spot right now. Pontiac's in a really, really difficult spot right now. When I look at the division right now, I still think when I look at the blue, it's Bloomfield Hills, then it's Rochester, then Stony Creek. Pontiac, I'd say right there. Pontiac and Berkeley are right there. Royal Oak, it's hard for me to trust Royal Oak right now, especially with how everything's been. They had a tough loss to Brighton. So, we'll see. But Royal Oak, they've got, and then you have Ferndale U. So, we'll see where Ferndale U matches up. Then there's A&T as well. So, A&T, they've been a hard team to figure out. I mean, because they had a bounce-back win against Westland John Glenn. But a rough loss to Ferndale U. They lost to Redford Union. And they lost to Troy. Now, Troy's an interesting team. I mean, we'll talk Troy in a minute here. But when I look at the division right now, I still think Bloomfield Hills is the team to beat in that division. But we'll see. We'll see. And they made that big statement win against Troy. That's huge. So, we'll see. We're going to see. Then we look at the red. North Farmington's the perfect Jekyll and Hyde. They really are. Clarkson's Clarkston. Groves has been rolling. Groves has played a tough schedule. Impressive schedule for Groves. They knocked off Wayne Memorial. Really good game there in the boys. Albeit, I think Simpson had 34, Gibson had 25. He had a kid, I think he had Douglas who went off for for Wayne Memorial. He had 46 points. What do you say? What do you say about that? And for Groves to win that game, that says a lot. Really does. Says a lot. So Groves right now, to me, looks like they are the best team in the red. Ferndale's been a weird team to figure out. I can't figure this team out. I just can't figure the Eagles out. I just can't figure them out. Adams has not been the same team since the Stony Creek game. They really haven't. I mean, they've had some close games, but they found ways to win. But I think it's interesting to see what's going on with Adams. I'm curious to see, because there's pressure on Adams now to make some noise. There is some pressure on him. We'll see. We'll see what happens with him. But there's pressure on them. There really is. West Bloomfield's like kind of that Jekyll and Hyde a little bit when I look at the Lakers. I mean, like, West Bloomfield's been a weird team to figure out. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, you look at the Lakers, and they had some good wins. I mean, there was some time they looked good in some wins. I mean, like, they knocked off UD Jesuit earlier in the year. I mean, they had so it's interesting to see how West Bloomfield. I mean, they had a terrible loss in Muskegon. They knocked off Adams in a good one, lost to Belleville, lost to Old Redford, knocked off University Prep, and lost to UD. So they're 2-4. Record's deceiving. Record's really deceiving. But still, you know what I mean? So you kind of like figure out, then you got to play Clarkston, which is going to be really difficult. So West Bloomfield's been a really odd team to figure out. I mean, to me, that was the worst they played was the Muskegon game. I mean, they were hung in it tough with Belleville, hung in it with UD, survived the University Prep, lost to Old Redford. They're a weird team to figure out. Really, really weird team. Then they got to play Clarkson, which is very difficult. So we'll see. So we'll see how that one goes. I mean, like, obviously, it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. But still, we'll see. Then we look at, of course, in the boys' side of things here, North Farmington coming off a difficult loss to Belleville, 47-45. Heck of a game there. North Farmington's been a really odd team to figure out. Really, really odd team. So, it's interesting to see what the Raiders have. Really interesting to see how things go. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, Coach John Negoshin's team, up and down. Good analogy. Up and down. Perfect description of the Raiders right now. Up and down. So far in the red, what I'm seeing right now is, I'd say Groves right now is the best team. Clarkson's probably number 2. Had a nice win against Northville on the boys' side. Congratulations, Coach Tim Wasilic on his 100th win as coach at Clarkson? I think it is. But congratulations, Coach Tim Wasilic. Obviously, you look at Clarkson, I think they're the second best team behind Groves right now. Then I would say right now it's West Bloomfield, Ferndale, West Bloomfield, and Adams. So that's my take of the red right now. Based on that order, I would say right now it's Groves, Clarkston, West Bloomfield, Ferndale, and then Adams. So we'll see how that goes. We'll really see how that one goes. Now we go to the white. Oxford's been rolling people. They just knocked off Livonia Stevenson 70-35. But I just cannot put this team on the schedule of Lake Orion's schedule. I can't do it. I mean, you look at comparing and contrasting schedules. I mean, with Oxford's schedule and Lake Orion's schedule, it's not even close. Lake Orion's played a by far tougher schedule than Oxford. I would say Troy's even played a tougher schedule. I mean, Troy, they didn't look good against Howell. And they do have one of the best players in the game, Mason Parker. If Andrew Lake's a really good player. But, you know, Howell's a solid team. Howell is a really solid team. Lake Orion, of course, coming off that tough loss. Lake Orion, their schedule has been absolutely ridiculous. And all this without Ryan Washoe. They've only had Ryan Washoe for one game. That was the Adams game. So that kind of tells you where they've been. And you look at Oxford right now, they're sitting really nice right now, unbeaten. But you got to look at the schedule. Look at the schedule. And I'll bet you they'll probably admit it. They haven't played the greatest of schedules. You know, you look at Lake Orion. Lake Orion, they played a vicious schedule. If you compare Oxford and you put them against Lake Orion's schedule, I would be honest with you, that team would be 1-5. That team would be 1-5. I don't know about the Adams game, but I don't think they knock off Canton. I don't think they beat Novi. I don't think they beat Dakota. And I don't think they beat Clarkson. And Lake Orion right now sits at 2-4. Virtually with a lot of injuries right now. The injury to Ryan Washoe is huge. Injury to Stephen Butcher is huge. So for them to sit at 2-4 right now, if they can win in these next two games and finish at 4-4 on the year heading into 2025, that says something. That says something with that schedule that Lake Orion's played. And you look at, they still got a tough non-conference game with Stony Creek looming. And I'll tell you, Stony Creek's better than people think they are. So, for Oxford, I would love to see them play a red opponent. Obviously, you know, they're going to say, well, they beat Davison. Davison's down this year. But I would love to see Oxford see it for them to play a red opponent. I would love for them to play a red opponent. The closest opponent to a red team I think Oxford's going to see all year is probably going to be Lake Orion. So, and Troy's got to be in that conversation. I put Troy in that conversation as well, considering Mason Parker's there. So, Oxford right now, jury's still out on Oxford. Lake Orion, despite the 2-4 record, they're legit. Troy, obviously Mason Parker. You knew it was going to be a little bit of a down year for them after what happened to them last year. Last year was a great year for Troy. And then you look at, Seaholm's been struggling a little bit. Troy Athens has been struggling a little bit. Oak Park's been up and down. Harper Woods has been up and down. So, you really look at that division and, it's kind of expected to where it would be right now. Kind of is. I don't see really any changes in the division right now. I know it's a big week for Troy because Troy has both Lake Orion and Oxford coming to Troy. So we'll see where they're at when it comes to league standings. But when I look at the division right now, I still think it's down to 3 teams. Got Lake Orion, Oxford, and Troy. So, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And it's really interesting to see how the division's really starting the process, starting to pick things up. But there's a lot to really look at when you look at the division. When you look at the white. It's a really, really interesting division right now, seeing where everybody's at. But if I had to pick a team right now who I think right now is the best team in that division right now, honestly, I would have to say Lake Orion is. Because, one, battle-tested, played a tough schedule. Then I would say Troy. Troy probably is number 2. Because of, one, the schedule. Yes, they've had some flaws. But then you look at Oxford. Oxford, for me, the eyeball test for Oxford is they have to play a red opponent. They have to play a team that's in the red. Because I'll tell you what right now, once they get in the districts, they're running the Grand Blanc. Grand Blanc's played a tougher schedule than Oxford. So, we'll see what they're made of. But for me, with Oxford and Coach Joe Fed, he's going to have to play a team in the red. Whether it's scrimmage them or play them. I would rather have them scrimmage them to see where they're at. They could definitely do it during the winter break. Could definitely do it. So we'll see what happens. So far I haven't heard much around the league yet when it comes to Waterford's situation. But if it does occur, I think most likely it could be in the winter months. So very similar to that of Harper Woods. So it'll be really interesting to see how, I've not heard anything on the Waterford situation yet. If I do, I'll let everybody around OAA Nation know on the blog at SagamorBay4650 at blogspot.com for the latest information around the OAA. We're also going to preview next week's podcast, the Christmas classics, of course, the Motor City Roundabout classics for both the guys and the girls. We're going to also look at the, we're going to preview the other games surrounding the Christmas break. So we'll see what happens going forward. So, everybody, I'm signing off here. Make sure you follow the blog at SaturdayFooty50 at blogspot.com for the latest information around the OAA and also everything going around the league. So, see what happens going forward. All right, everybody, I'm signing off here. Take care. God bless. I'll see you all next week. Take care and God bless. God bless.